Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 611. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have Strimtom coming back to the show. Hello, Strimtom.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got a good topic. Will be up your wheelhouse here. It's always fun to have you on the show. Let's see. This week's screenshot, Panros the Druid receives information from his forest friends in the 479th screenshot of the week. Thanks, Panros, for sending in this week's screenshot. That is the Stormhorns.
Yeah, I don't know how this picture was taken because the deer always just book it away from me. This must be some serious stealth skills going on right now.
Yeah, well, he's even got an enemy wolf in there and like the little cat-like thing in the front, which might be a companion or something, or like a pet or something like that. Actually, that wolf is probably his pet wolf, right? That's probably what's going on
I
there if
think
he's
so.
a druid. But yeah, it's a fun little shot there. An impressive number of deer. We like to talk about Dungeons and Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by CyberEars, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next weekend. And you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages at DDOcast on Twitter is the best, as well as our website at DDOcast.com, where we have a calendar and some other stuff there. Yeah, on the podcast this week, we're gonna kind of kick off a new series, discussion topics. It'll probably this year's will probably be much more like the one where we talked about past lives, where it was kind of we went over the course of the year, we kind of kept coming back to it. This one we're going to be talking more about character builds and different archetypes to build towards. But we're going to start kind of a bigger picture and talk about what kind of character types should you consider having in your stable, as it were. It's kind of the colloquial term for your selection of characters on a character screen is your character stable, and we're going to talk about what kind of characters maybe you should look at having and what's kind of a good mixture and that kind of a thing. So that's kind of where we're going today, and then kind of in beyond, we'll kind of dive more deeply into how to build some of those character types and some things. We won't get like too far into the weeds, right? Like we're not going to talk about how to build a fighter two-handed or two-weapon fighting build and what the best build. No, we're going to talk about some different kind of things to think about as you're building these characters and how to go about doing that. So it won't be super specific, but I think it'll be really helpful for some people and kind of answer some questions that we've gotten. First, we'll talk about game news. We did have a little bit of stuff. There was update 46, patch 4, hotfix 2 came out this week on Friday, which is a really weird day to have a patch. They tend to really avoid doing that. The main reason being that, if something goes wrong, then they have to work over the weekend to fix it. So they don't
Exactly.
they don't tend to do that. There were some release notes. It's really small patch. And this is kind of why they did it on Friday. Players running the game through Steam will now open the DDO store in an external web browser. This change will resolve an issue where players were unable to make purchases using their Steam wallet. That's kind of the big impetus in here.
Yeah, I always forget that like DDO and Lotro are available on Steam, and I kind of don't think about it until then. Something happens with the Steam being able to purchase things on Steam because this isn't the first time, and then there's hundreds of posts of people unable to buy things, and it's like, oh right, that's a big deal.
Do you use Steam for these games?
For DDO and Lotro, no.
Okay.
Steam tells you how many hours you've played a video game, and I don't want to know. That would make me feel unhappy, so I just kind of avoid that.
Yeah, it's fair. I tend to avoid Steam where possible, not because of any particular reason against Steam, but Steam takes a cut of the revenue from the game, right? And I think a lot of those games tend to be kind of smaller studio and stuff. And if I'm going to spend money on a game, I I kind of want that money as much as possible to go to the studio and the people developing it, as opposed to
Absolutely.
Steam.
Like, it's good that they're on Steam,
Yeah.
because when something is on this front page of Steam or it's featured by Steam,
Mhm.
the sales go up. So it's definitely good for them. But yeah, if you already like the game, let's say you shouldn't use Steam because you can use your Steam wallet, but standalone
Yeah.
download's pretty good too. Also, I find downloads are almost always faster with the standalone client.
Oh.
Games like Final Fantasy 14 or Path of Exile are huge examples where it's like 2 or 3 hours later the patch will download, as opposed to if you just have a standard client. Um, and I'm sure it's probably similar with Lotro and DDO.
And to be clear, like I use Steam. I have some games I've purchased through Steam, and I probably could even download those games separately, and I haven't. But Steam is great in the sense that it has a collection of games, and makes it really easy to access them and download and play a bunch of different games, and kind of have a UI interface to access those different games, right? Like, I'm not knocking Steam.
Exactly. Who doesn't have 20 games that they've bought during a summer sale they've never played yet?
And a lot of those games are smaller studios, and if it wasn't for Steam, they wouldn't exist as a game. So
yeah, but this is a good fix, and it's good that they paid attention to that.
They also released the release note that Hardcore Leaderboard will now update when a living character logs into the game world, in addition to existing actions that cause Leaderboard to update. This means that when work is done, like happened 2-3 weeks ago, when they were doing all the server kind of stuff, the Hardcore Leaderboard got wiped. By which we don't mean to say that all the information just disappeared. It just meant that your character had to ping that system, and at the time, the only way to do that was to finish a quest. Although I think you could have turned something in.
Yeah, if you turn something in, it also works.
Yeah, or just complete a small, easy quest. I know the Dragon Mark quest was one that got thrown out. I can't confirm whether or not it worked. Vaughn 3 entry quest. There's a couple options, and you can just run on a casual or whatever. But now you just have to log in. So, pretty easy to do. I would recommend that if you are hoping to be on the leaderboard between now and the end of Hardcore on September 22nd, I believe, make sure you log in with that character just so that it pings the system and it gets you in there. Also, there are now commemorative plaques in the Hall of Heroes listing the top 100 leaderboards for the Hardcore Seasons 1 and 2. So that promise has now been fulfilled.
Better late than never.
Let's see. There was a bunch of kind of continuing ongoing discussion about the Update 47 patch, mostly about the loot. So a couple things that I pulled out from Linabelle and kind of talking about some of the feedback and things. The heroic raid tier ingredients from Lord of Blades and Master Artificer are being removed from the heroic alchemical crafting costs, which we knew. It'll be cheaper and easier to build an item. Nothing about the system is changing. They're just kind of removing the cost. Also, if you have spare heroic raid tier ingredients, you will be able to melt them down into Sharn or House Cannith materials, which is kind of the new information, which will be kind of nice. So if you have some of that stuff left over, you can melt it down into something useful. I always like when they do that, right?
Make a new weapon right away.
What was that?
I said make a new weapon right away.
Yeah. I always like when they kind of give legacy things like a use, right?
Yeah. I mean, MMOs are built on having different currencies that you collect with every different update or expansion, because if you use the same currency, then there's nothing new to do. So I like it when they do stuff like this, so they retroactively say, okay, that old currency, you can still use it for a new purpose now if you happen to have it.
Mm-hmm. Also, after some discussion on the team, moving forward, we're exempting material types from the 4 effect rule in named weapon shields. I think is a fantastic. This change I think was well received.
Absolutely.
The Spear of Mournlands is picking up improved destruction as its 4th effect. It should make named items just a tad punchier and a lot more flavorful, and give the design team a little more room to put together a better weapon or shield package. So if it's a weapon is adamantine, that will no longer count against its bonuses.
Which I mean, I'm with the part of the community that's like it shouldn't count against its bonuses. It
Oh
should
no,
just be
it's
part of the
not.
weapon. So I think this is a very good change. I think it's
Especially
going to
when
be
you
good.
consider the number of weapons that do have multiple bypasses, right? Um, and it's not part of those four things, and it's not listed in there. Why is adamantine different from evil, right? There's a bunch of weapons that have evil bypass on them for free. It's not part of an ability or anything. Like they don't even have evil damage. They just bypass evil. Um,
Yeah. Like the material type and the bypass always felt to me like it was more about theming and less about like
mhm.
effectiveness. Like this weapon is an adamantine weapon because it's meant to be for dealing with specific types of constructs. Like when you think about the spear of the Mournlands, because you've got the Lord of Blades fighting his way through the Caneth manufacturer. There's lots of adamantine stuff. To me, it always felt like it was more of like a theming piece. Like, yeah, it is an item effect and it is a stat that's beneficial, but it's the idea that's more important, I guess, because you can just
Right.
get a gem at the end of the day and become adamantine anyway.
Mhm. Although, I mean, that does take up a slot that you could put something else into it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
someday, in the hopefully not too terribly distant future, there will be an augment pass, and augments will be more useful again. Please.
Yeah, I'd like to see them also redo the entire damage reduction system because
Yeah.
I despise it. But that's a totally different topic for a different time.
I, yeah, that would be also nice.
It's just the idea that a monster has 50 damage reduction, so you do zero. It's like why can't it just have like 50% damage reduction so I at least hit it a little bit?
Oh, I thought you were talking about like player characters.
Oh no, no. I was talking about, material types and bypassing damage reduction. Like they made the
Sure.
change that elementals, instead of reducing damage by a flat amount, now just take 20% less physical damage. And so now the hour-long fight we had in Temple of Elemental Evil, Reaper 10, is not going to be an hour anymore against 100,000 health elementals that take zero physical damage.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the idea that uh, having access to 5 DR when something's doing 1,000 points of damage is kind of ridiculous.
Also, again, same problem. They
Yeah,
got to rebalance that whole system.
yeah. Same problem in the other direction. Like what they did with barbarians, right? Like that works. Just
Yeah, it's really
make it
cool
make it
because
percent.
you don't feel it like in a moment to moment sense, but you feel it overall because your barbarian's tanky.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
health and that weird damage reduction. It's good.
Uh, hey, here's a side. Continuing the tangent. Do you know what the mummy's DR is in Search and Rescue? You
So
you bring that thing up in Skulls, and that guy is beefy.
I don't know what his DR is because I've never been able to do it with a melee character. Usually we just bring a sorcerer or something who just fires it, and it is very weak to fire damage. It's also in the few areas where you can make good use of the spell Flame Blade. Um, but yeah, I have no idea how to beat that guy. Patience mostly.
Yeah.
Except he
Uh,
hits like a truck on Reaper 10.
that too. Uh, I was in there. I did that on Reaper 10, and I'm pretty sure that we spent more time killing that thing than we did the dragon at the end.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Back on topic. Legendary alchemical crafting. So last week we like I don't know, less than 24 hours before we had the show last week, we found out that uh, legendary alchemical stuff was going to go to a crafting system, uh, which was cool. I think a lot of people wanted that to be a thing, have it be a crafting system. Um, Now, with this came the understanding that it was no longer going to be support sentient weapons. Um, and Linable actually even said flat out that this is not a technical limitation; it's a design choice. That crafting weapons cannot be sentient weapons, and that's a design choice, not a technical limitation. Which I guess is kind of neat to know. I'm not sure if that really helped the case. I think that a lot of people want both in one. And so this kind of brought about the concern. Well, if I can't have these weapons as being these new chemical weapons being sentient, uh, then they're going to be outpaced really quickly. Well, it turns out that Linnabelle has already considered this, and the legendary alchemical system is going to focus specifically on items that go in the offhand, including weapons, rune arms, shields, and orbs. It's not a main hand focused system anymore, and if it's not, then Linnabelle can do more to protect its niche. So this means that the bows and two-handed weapons are all gone because they can't be offhanded weapons. There's now an orb in there. There's also some shields in there. It's not meant to rebalance fighting styles. It's meant to provide a way for players who are looking to craft an offhand item, a way to craft an offhand item. Which I think is kind of interesting. He also says, for clarity, when choosing what would be available with Legendary Alchemical, he looked at what was available in regular Alchemical and upscaled things to modern values. There is some entirely new stuff there on spellcast damage procs, elemental caster level increases, the missing alchemical stats, etc. But it follows the 4 elements pretty closely at the moment. It also looks like it's going to be a 3 kind of a 3-tier thing again, and it looks like you'll be able to kind of mix and match. We did also learn that the blanks will be bound to character like other raid items, and you'll need to raid to get both the blanks and the necessary threads to craft these items. This is a raid crafting system, and it will require you to raid to craft with it. So, what do you think about all that?
I think that the idea of having a crafted versus sentient weapon, like one or the other, kind of makes sense, sort of thematically, because the sentience is the level of customization on your non-customizable weapon, and then the crafting is getting the customization on the weapon as a base. So I can kind of see where both of these arguments are coming together. And I also think it's important to remember there are a striking number of people who don't have Ravenloft, who don't have Sharn, and have no access to sentient weapons whatsoever, and they could care less whether they actually need to sentient their weapon or not. Because
Sure.
that's also important. There's people who are just, that maybe they're subscribed, but they don't buy the expansions or something. So there's going to be people out there who don't want to deal with sentience. And also, every time you want to redo sentience, you got to get your sentience toolkits, which requires false questing or doing the store, and having weapons where you can have something that's still powerful, still is a raid weapon, and fits your character's niche, but doesn't require as much maintenance as 100,000 XP sentient jewel, is
Sure.
kind of freeing almost. On top of the fact that then these all just make good offhand weapons, assuming the stats are right. The stats on the weapons that were presented looked, for the most part, pretty good, as far as actual competitive damage on weapons go.
Yeah, I mean, we should mention that you don't need Ravenloft or Sharn to do sentient weapons. You can get sentient jewels out of White Plume Mountain for existence.
Yes, White Plume Mountain,
yeah. There's also the Kobold and Dragon sentient gem, which are, shall we say, a bit more limited in their access because they're a time frame thing. I'm not Happy 14 code. Is that at the end through August, or was that through the end of the year?
I believe that's through the end of the year, but I could very well be wrong about that.
So if you need a sentient jewel, Happy 14 will get you a dragon sentient jewel if it's still going.
But yeah, you are right. There are ways to get it. It's just the idea that there are some weapons that are still good without needing to be sentiented, I think, is an important thing we should have in this game.
I agree. I like the idea of having a system that really focuses on offhand things. I think that's something that, like, now that I think about it when it's brought up, and like, oh yeah, that makes sense because we don't really have that, right? You can do it with some Shroud stuff, I think, but it's something that focuses on offhands could be valuable to the game. The part that I kind of don't like about this change is I don't feel like there was a very there was no real attempt by Linabella or SSG to say, okay, well, we could go in that direction. Here's what that would look like. Which do you guys prefer? Right? Like, let's have a discussion about, do we prefer the first iteration where it wasn't crafty and we had this set of things, and then now or we can go to this, we're going to make this a crafting system, you won't be able to use sentience, and we're going to focus it on offhand weapons. Like, I would have liked to have seen here's some choices, as opposed to, okay, well, we're taking the feedback that we want a crafting system here. This is what that's going to be now. And I don't feel like we got a good pro con option or discussion there that I think we would have been better if we'd had that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have changed anything, but that was kind of the big thing for me.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I mean, it's hard because, depending on what data points you're looking at, where the feedback comes through, all of the staff are very, very involved in all the Lemania events, trying to take as much time as possible to get as much feedback as possible. And I play for like 6 hours and then let it go and put some feedback. So I'm not as in tune with sometimes what the community is thinking about these things. And I think it's difficult to have that type of discussion, I guess. So, but I agree. It would be nice if instead of them just coming up with a new system, if there was more of like, this was the old thing, this is the new thing. What do you guys think? Give us some breakdowns. But then also sometimes it's hard how do you even know if the data you're getting is going to be good or useful if you've already,
Sure.
started choosing a direction.
Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't bound to character rate items. That's it. If I could change one thing, because you're gonna get so many bucklers.
General, so.
Yeah, but you're gonna get so many bucklers and never get that tower shield or that heavy shield.
You know what? If those blanks could get fed to a sentient gem, I don't care.
Actually, okay, never mind. You're right. You're right. You are so right. I retract all my statements. I completely forgot about that.
If I can feed them, that's great.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
We'll talk about character stables here in a few minutes, but I got plenty of characters I can feed sentient gems to, and I've been building some of those. And I even went and turned in something like 40 weapons worth of materials from the Evening Star crafting or challenges to get some items to feed to sentient gems. So like I can find things to feed them to.
Oh yeah, last time I checked my spreadsheet, I was only 240,000 sentient XP away from finishing all my gems on my characters.
Yeah, you need more characters, sir. You're far too close. Yeah, like, and don't worry, like, I really appreciate that, especially Linabelle, particularly with the loot, is taking a lot of feedback and doing a lot of iterating, and I really appreciate that. I just felt like this was such a big departure from what we were seeing. I would have liked to have seen instead of like, okay, well, I'm going to take that idea about we want it to be a craft system, then I'm just going to go to this. Like, I just feel like there was a missed opportunity there to have that conversation of, you guys can either have this or that or this new thing. What do people want, right? Because I know, and like there were some people in that thread that are like, wait, the crossbow's gone? I wanted that crossbow, right? So, and I know there's more people that are kind of having that experience too. So,
oh yeah.
And Steel Star has also been doing some feedback and iterating as well about the shifter, which I'm really kind of interested to see what comes next. He said that they are replacing the augment summoning from the Razor Claw shifter, the iconic, and the Steel Star said they are doing that, and they are also going to add more hand wrap stuff. It's mostly offhand strike chance and offhand double strike. Not really flavorful, but great. It also said,
well, it's in the Razor Claw shifter.
Yeah.
The one where you automatically dual wield because it's all hand wraps. And Barbarian doesn't get offhand strike chance, so it works really well.
No, like it's good. I was hoping for something that was kind of flary. Also, Steel Star said there are a few new things, both hand wraps and non-hand wraps related to come in the next build. Non-iconic shifter getting a few things also should be interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully,
Did
we'll.
you play around with the shifter at all?
Yeah. I don't
I
tend
tested
to
it
jump onto
for a
Lamania
while.
very often.
Oh, I spent probably like 2 hours looking at the shifter tree and the abilities. Nothing worked on the Mania at all. Uh, like so that which is gonna stop like bugs that are gonna get fixed. So like things are scaling off the wrong stuff, and half the things didn't work. But the things that did work looked very cool. The attack animation for the shifter, you are the Razor Claw, your Wolverine,
Right.
which is fantastic. It's all custom animations. They have this awesome pounce attack, which is super flavorful. I'm not gonna call it good, but it's very flavorful. Um, they've been talking about some stuff I know internally that look very promising as to make the shifters kind of feel more unique in terms of the races.
I think that was kind of my big takeaway from the Razor Claw, right? Was this idea that here's a barbarian who uses hand wraps. Cool, but there wasn't really very much in that tree that made it so that this was a barbarian who uses hand wraps as opposed to a barbarian who just is using hand wraps instead of a great axe. It felt like it not necessarily needed a punch, but it needed some flair, which is kind of
Yeah, for sure. It makes me think of how Yasmir's Scourge is all about like the maces.
exactly
They've got
yes.
like all sorts of they've got like special mace
Hmm.
attacks and mace
Yeah.
things. I have a feeling that I have a feeling that they're going to be taking some inspiration there.
There's a question in the chat that maybe you can answer. Does the character model actually quote shift? Which I believe the question is: do when they use their shifter ability, do they get features on the avatar?
No, it's currently the rage animation. Although I read somewhere, I don't know, that they were tentatively going to change it to a different animation, but currently when you press shift, your guy just does like the rage and then that's it. Or your hands come up for a second, that's it. Regardless of which shift you do, all three look the same.
It'd be kind of neat. I think it'd be kind of a resource hog. It'd be kind of interesting, but that would be neat if they kind of had something slightly different to your character, right?
Well, it's funny because there's two new animations. So the Shifter Razor Claw has their custom claw animation, which looks amazing if you haven't seen it. And then they have an ability called Howl, where it's like an AoE buffing, debuffing based on whatever it is, whatever shifter you are. And it has this custom voice line, so it does this big scream, and there's this like almost like energy wave that comes out of you, and you do this custom animation. So
Fun.
if they could do something that looks as flashy as that, but for the shift, I would love to see that because the Howl looks great.
We did also get some news. Lamania Preview 3 is expected to open on the afternoon of September 8th and remain open until the early evening of September 10th. So that's Tuesday through Thursday. Those times will be Eastern. Character copies to Lamania are expected to be available for this preview. And it is expected to contain the following features: Shifter, Razor Claw Shifter, Fey Dark Illusionist, the new quest, The Promise of Flame, Legendary Lord of Blades, Master Artificer, Vision of Destruction, new named loot, and miscellaneous small changes and bug fixes. And of course, they will post the full release notes when that server opens. Also, Steelstar did say that we do still have plans for further updates to bows, but those changes will not be in Update 47 or the Feywild expansion. Oh, that's a bummer. But yeah, so Lumania 3 is coming out. Hey, what do you think of the Fey Dark Illusionist? I didn't talk to you about that yet.
So I love the flavor of the tree. I think that I compare it. I liken it a lot to kind of like Vistani Knife Fighter in how it has a very clear goal and it executes on the goal of making it so that pretty much any class in the game can pick Fey Dark and be able to do something with it. And it's also self-contained, where if you take the capstone, you go tier 5, you don't have you're not Harper Agent, where you can't even play your character and you quests are hard on normal difficulty, right? You can still clear out content on Elite. You can still feel good about your character. Um, I think that they're just missing a few more flavor elements, but overall, the animations look great. The attacks feel really good. I like the direction that they went with it with the familiar. And even some of the animations, they have a custom animation for the distract where you can use your familiar as like a noisemaker trap, and it all looks great. So overall, I'm very happy with it. I definitely think it could use a tweak upwards in the strength just to make it a little bit. It's not competing with any trees currently, so It would be nice if it would at the very least compete with something like Vistani. I don't want Inquisitive, but it would be nice if that. But other than that, it was great. I loved it. And the Shadow Blades, oh, you summon the Shadow Blades and it looks so cool. Like they may not be the most powerful because they're short swords, which is a major limitation, but they are probably one of the coolest looking weapons in the game. Uh, be warned if you do, because we tested this. If you make a cosmetic of the flame or of the Shadow Blade using a Mirror of Glamoring, it disappears on logout. So don't do that.
I got plenty of mirrors. I'll do that for a picture or something.
Just do it every time. Oh god.
I don't use my mirrors very much. It's not like I'm not a big cosmetics guy, and I've said that on the show. It's not that I don't use cosmetics. I just don't like seek them out and go really crazy and whatnot. But yeah, I think the common kind of feedback that I've seen is we want more. Like it seems to lack the punch to compete with other trees.
Yeah. It's like it's good, it's versatile, and you could play paladin, druid, fighter, bard, doesn't matter. They'll all kind of do reasonably well, but it is something where you're using the tree and also your base class, so it does have some no, it pulls in a lot of different elements. It's like how a Vistani cleric doesn't feel the same as a Vistani rogue. It's the same thing. A Fey Dark will feel different between different characters, but it needs a couple, a little bit more spice. But I guess we'll find out what they decided to do with it on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Just in case people are hearing the background noise right now, the ice cream truck just pulled up and the neighbor kids are going nuts outside. So if you're hearing stuff, that's what's going on. All right, bonus days. DDO bonus days bring you a +10 Treasure Hunters boost now through September 7th. Also, double Mysterious Remnants continue through September 7th, so you can get twice the chance for Remnants to appear now through September 7th. That double Remnants one was actually extended. It was supposed to be through the 6th. They extended it through the 7th because the 7th is Labor Day in the U.S., so it's a holiday. So as is typical and customary, they've extended the bonus days through the holiday. The store sales for the week, double bonus points is back. Get twice the bonus points in the DDO store through September 13th. So if you'd like to get double bonus points, you have another week. The sale is improve your character. You get 20% off of select stat tomes, skill tomes, tomes of heroic and epic learning, and the Harper Agent enhancement tree through September 10th. And I will take another moment to say, hey, this improve your character sale. Can they maybe cycle through the different enhancement trees so it's not always the Harper Agent tree that's on sale?
Yeah, I feel bad. All of those you who are listening and you just heard me bash the Harper Agent tree up to tier 3. It's really good. It's really good for that tier 1 and 2 and 3. So don't
intelligence
be
and
fooled by
damage
the
with
tree.
it. So
that's what I said. That's what I said. 1, 2, and 3. Intelligence hit, damage, know the angles. That's a good tree.
Yeah. The coupon code gets you a free wand of a free wand of false life with the coupon code false life wand through September 10th.
I've never gotten that. Is it a real false life wand? Like, do you need UMD to use it?
I assume not, but I don't know. I haven't gotten it either. Hey, it's free. We could try it.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't. It's not something that I plan on getting, right? Like, I would hang on to that thing. I'm so bad at using consumables. I would hang on to that thing for so long.
Yeah.
I've occasionally gotten the here's 5 acid resist 20 potions, and it probably took me a year and a half to use them all.
I'm still so bad at using consumables. I have the freaking candy canes from like 2007 or 8 when they first did their first festival events still on my characters.
Yeah, I mean, healing stuff I tend to use a little bit more, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've actually, although I have started to throw out more healing stuff because I just tend to use heal scrolls or repair scrolls, and I don't really need the wands all the time. So I can always go and buy some wands if I need it. All right, that'll take us to community news. The 395th Chronicle. Alex delved into Shifter. DDOCast we got a shout for previewing update 47 last week. And Strimtom has a question. How good is the Sun Flask? Strimtom, how good is the Sun Flask?
You know what? It hits really hard, but due to desync and latency, it doesn't hit. So your results may vary.
The most I used them was at low levels on a druid back when you could use them as a. I don't know if you still can actually. I feel like
You cannot. They have
yeah,
patched that.
yeah, that's what I thought. But you could, hold them as a druid and then go to town on undead and oozes. And at early levels, it was just smoking hot. Like, it was great.
Yeah, they're very weird. They say they blind stuff, but they don't. They don't say that they do extra damage to undead, but they actually do extra damage to undead with a save, and it's crazy high. So it's just like free damage. If you use enchant weapons, the spell, or enchant weapons, the past life, it applies the property magic to the sun flask, and Sunflasks do only light damage. However, with magic, the game doesn't know what to do because it has to apply a damage type. So because it's a dart, it gives it piercing as well, and then bricks the Sunflask versatility in terms of bypassing physical damage reduction. And it turns out it actually has collision with everything, including players and many different objects with its arc. So if you try to throw it, it won't throw through players.
Dope.
And it collides with itself. So if you turn on improved precise shot, it is constantly exploding as it goes through the air. It's a
Also, you
very
would need a
interesting item.
lot of sun flasks in order to have a build out of it.
Yeah, I've used. I'm a level 18 right now, and I've used I think 9,000. Might be a little more. So I still have 15 or 16,000 left. So we'll probably try to go to 30 with it.
Does
Take it into a raid.
one? How did you get that many sun flasks? That's amazing. Uh, like they only stack to like 50, don't they?
They only stack to 50, and they also weigh half a pound each. So each stack of 50
Oh boy.
sunflasks is 25 pounds, which wouldn't normally be a problem. But one backpack worth is, I'm not going to do that, 500 pounds or something. So you need a lot of strength to be able to play this character. And they only stack to stacks of 50, including like in your inventory, and also they don't in the shared bank. Fortunately, you can put them in the crafting bank for some reason. I have no idea why. They're not a
Oh,
crafting
interesting. I
component,
haven't
but they
tried
go
that.
in there. Yeah, they go in there though, and still only stacked to 50. So it's a lot of trips to the bank. I got them because I posted a whole bunch all throughout October, November, and December. So during Festival, I had people mailing me hundreds of sunflasks every day that they got from turning in their copper
There
coins
you go.
that they didn't want. So thank you to all the people who gave me those sunflasks for putting me through this character that is very frustrating to play, but it's kind of neat and very loud. It's really loud. The sunflasks just don't stop.
So does the are you able to take an enhancement that preserves ammo?
Yeah, that's the only way to do it. So
Okay.
the first 8 points of my character went into fletching from falconry. Another option is there's the same effect in rogue in the
Right.
mechanic tree. But I thought, well, I'm playing throwing potions, so I want to just play an alchemist and confuse people because they'll think I'm casting spells, but I'm not. I'm actually just throwing a weapon that makes an insane amount of noise, and there's all these light flashes everywhere. So I'm playing as a pure alchemist. I know it's worse, but just for the flavor, I had to do it. And it's also now my potions do poison damage and light damage. It's a very weird combination.
uh, yeah, that's if you want to check that out. I'm sure you've got several videos now of playing that. So, the
Yeah.
comment for the week: if your main character had a nickname, what would it be? Oh, jeez, I don't even know.
Oh man. Probably bad idea because I run all my bad ideas through my main character on different lives.
Like your Sunflask build?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I imagine it would be something like, like fighter pilots have call signs, and sometimes those
Yep.
those call signs come from like something that's a little embarrassing or something that people will never let you forget. Probably had something along that line, but I'm not really sure what it would be.
Oh, if we're going that way, then people will just call me Laser. Because I lasered a guy in Hardcore 1.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. That would definitely be definitely work for you.
Yep.
Still one of the better hardcore videos out there. Let's see. Fan site news. DDO Stream is your first stop to find DDO on Twitch. This week, Doug Glendower does a giveaway. Brighter Days Ahead tonight marks the end of summer. Antket does some quests. Hey, Strimtom got excited on Twitch this week. Warblewind slays and Cobalt Even sings DDO Filks for extra life. Let's see, on YouTube, Louis7, a regular Lotro video maker, checks out DDO. Serious Games helps people get started, and free-to-play DDO runs Fire on Thunder Peak with 3 people. I'm trying to think, what's the fewest number of people you could do Fire on Thunder Peak with? Probably 2, huh?
2, yeah, because you need to keep the dragons apart.
Yeah, if you're by yourself, it's pretty darn hard to do that. You'd have to you might be able to do it with one, because one of the dragons is definitely faster than the other, but that would be hard.
I think you can solo it on normal, because I think Ruin will go through the damage reduction on normal difficulty.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That feels like cheating.
Oh, it's 100% cheating, but you might be able to solo it like that.
Let's see. And Cordovan runs the 3s in this weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream. I don't know what that means. The 3s?
Level 3s.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, so there you go. Did you want to say anything else about your Twitch stream? Or kind of in that neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, if you want to watch somebody start balding about the fact that they are playing a character build that they hyped up for months, then definitely check out twitch.tv/Strimtom, where it's interesting. We learn a lot. That apparently Thrower Alchemist is really good if you just put on a regular weapon. The comparison between just putting on a dart, oh my god, it's so much better. It's actually a really good build. So, but yeah, it's fun. I actually had to check that out. I wasn't sure why you said to get excited. I use puns for all the titles of my live streams. So I had an excited pun about gardening.
Yeah,
I should probably actually read it.
I can tell you that Cordovan does not watch all of these. He kind of just grabs the titles and goes with it.
Please don't watch all of my live streams. I'm very annoying. No, I'm so excited about the spring that I almost wet my plants.
Let's see. Moving right along then. Don't forget to check out D&D Night on DDO Stream, Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/DDO Stream. And let's see, DDOCast Splat on most Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, here on twitch.tv/DDOCast. That's the Sedate group that I'm in on Kyber. We're working through the Stormhorns. I tell you, the breaking the ranks, when you're playing at a difficulty level that's just a little bit above, like, the easy point, that quest is one of those quests that can really snowball quickly and make it a lot of fun.
Oh, it's really stressful. Yeah. Because you're like, okay, there's some gnolls, whatever. Oh, there's some orcs. Ooh, I got tripped by that warg. Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah.
And then just mobs of giants with a dragon just going and dropping ice balls on you. And then you run away thinking you're safe, and nope, there's a trap, and you're paralyzed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that quest.
And they just keep coming too.
What was that?
And they just keep coming.
Yeah.
Like, you think you're done with the giant wave, and no, there's more of them. Or you think you're done with the gnolls, and there's just more of them.
Yeah, it can get challenging and really fun really fast. I mean, it can also become a train wreck pretty quickly, which we managed to barely avoid. Which is really kind of that threshold of fun versus painful. Breaking the ranks, weapon shipment. I mean, Devil's Assault used to be like that back in the day when it was pretty hard, but the power level is such that I would not put that quest in that vein anymore, unless maybe you're running it on high Reaper Skull or something.
Well, I find weapon shipment and even the Devil Assault, there's so much downtime between waves. Even think about the last quest in 3-0 East, where you have to spend 15 minutes guarding Coil.
Yeah.
And it's mostly 15 minutes like AFK with a monster every 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Versus this quest, where you're like, no, I need a break. Hold on, give me the shrine. Hold on, I'm not ready yet.
They don't give you much time to use that shrine, do they?
Yeah, they're like, oh, did you need more monsters? Hold on, we'll get them for you. I got a whole bunch in the back.
Yep.
Like, holy cow.
Yep. All right. Well, that covers the community news. We did have uh, a lightning post this week. Kirkos wrote in. So we were talking about our concerns last week that um, the new legendary raids might not have a long shelf life. And Kirkos says that if these revamped versions of Master Artificer and Lord of Blades have reasonable threads on completion and tome drop tier assignment, he can see these worked into the weekly rotations, even more if they add a teleport option to the starts. He also gives props to the Orion Rating Discord channel for the excellent raffle, which, yeah, they did it was a pretty crazy thing they did. It was pretty cool to see. As far as those raids go, I mean, yeah, I think the threads will definitely make them last longer, but we'll also have more raids that give threads, right? I mean, killing time gives threads. I don't think killing time has the same legs as Legendary Shroud does. So there's lots of places to get threads. I don't think that's enough of a draw to keep those raids in circulation as much, right?
I mean, it kind of is. When I think about it, your two options for getting threads quickly is buy a bunch of timers and run the same raid over and over, or as a group, decide to run a whole bunch of different raids to
Sure.
get threads from all the different things to stay on cooldown. I think the fact that there's like a sliding scale, the older content just doesn't give as many threads as the new content, means it's still not maybe relevant in terms of difficulty on like elite, but still relevant in terms of what it can still give you an end game currency, which I like. But then
Right.
there's also kind of like the almost choose your own adventure nature of the game that we have now, where some people want to do the raids because they want to gear, and some people want to do the raids because they really want to know if they can beat Shroud on Reaper 6 because they did it on Reaper 5 and they're not sure yet.
Sure.
And the fact that there's people out there that want to up the difficulty or play for different reasons, I think that's like Reaper mode enough makes it so as long as old content isn't out leveled, like raids are too low level that they can't be done on Reaper, I think any amount of threads will stay at least relevant somehow.
I think the thing that will actually make them have longer legs than threads is not needing to flag.
Oh man, I hate flagging for raids. Every
Um,
time you TR, they gotta fix that.
because of how often people TR, especially when you start looking at the rating community. I think the people who really tend to do a lot of rating also tends to do more TRing than maybe other people might. It's not a hard and fast rule, but like I'm looking at Strahd is not a raid that gets run very often anymore, and I think a big part of that is you have to run
12 quests.
12 quests to flag for it.
Yep.
Too hot to handle. You have to run 9 quests? Sounds about right.
Yeah, 9 quests.
That's a lot of quests to run for flagging. Now, I would tell you that those are great quests to run while you're leveling up, particularly run them in heroics and you're flagged when you get to epics or into legendary, right? So, but I have noticed, particularly in my guild, that you've got people just reincarnating and running up, and sometimes they don't flag for stuff, right? And then they don't run it because they're just not flagged for it.
A major problem is, hey, do you guys want to run Legendary Shroud? Oh, no, I didn't do those quests because I don't really like doing them while leveling. Oh, okay. Or, hey, do you guys want to do Fall of Truth? I didn't do Epic Giant Hold.
Sure.
So you can't go. It makes me wonder if there's like a solution to this problem, because flagging, obviously, with reincarnation, just kind of is how the game is. One thing I've thought that would be neat if they did it is imagine that if you're VIP when you reincarnate, you can choose whether to keep your flags or not. So
I mean, if it means you don't get the first time bonuses, most people won't use them.
No, you can keep the first time bonuses, but it means that you wouldn't have to flag for like the raid, like whatever it is that sets that completion. Because like quest completion, turning it in is separate from quest completion, as in the credit you get from actually doing the thing.
I mean, I think there's an
easy way to flag on casual.
There's an easy way to do that, in that you could create an item like the sigil that you can keep, or the what's the thing, the metal or whatever from Titan.
Yeah.
But then you'd have to carry those items, which could be a little bit of a hassle. But I think
Yeah,
there's
that's
a
what I'm
way that you
saying.
can do
Like,
that.
if there was a way to like build it into the UI or something base,
Hmm.
so that way it just applied to your account and you could choose, I'd love to see that because I feel like a lot of people would subscribe for that feature.
I mean, flagging is a weird thing, right? Like, it makes sense to me that there some things have flags. Um, but how do you find that good balance of uh how much you have to do to flag for something? I think it's
Well,
kind of
flagging,
tricky.
it makes sense from like a traditional MMO perspective.
And
If
a
I'm
storyline
playing
perspective
World
too.
of, yeah, when I'm playing World of Warcraft, I get to the max level, then I got to do the story quest to get to the raid, and then I go do the raid. But in DDO, it's I get to max level, and then I start again and I get to max level, and then I start again and I get to
Hmm.
max level, and then I do some raids, and then I start again. So,
Yeah.
the turnaround time on having to redo stuff in DDO goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I think it's a different game, and I think DDO might need just a different solution from the standard MMO paradigm of just go flag for stuff. I don't think they should eliminate flagging because it's important, like as you said, the story element. Like you want people to know why they're doing what they're
Hmm.
doing. Um, it's one of the reasons why like I find I struggle a little bit with stuff like Korkaza, the first both killing time and also riding the storm out, where the character only exists in the raid and there isn't too much of a build up in terms of the story as to what you're doing, which doesn't make it bad. It just kind of changes the motivation. Whereas a flagging quest would help you understand what's going on, similar to like how the build up to Fall of Truth is all throughout all the quests and the adventure zone and everything else.
Like
Um,
Project Nemesis, right? Like, it doesn't have flagging, but so if you just run that, you never ran the rest of Sharn, it would be kind of weird. But if you've
yeah,
run through
it's
Sharn, like, you see these characters in there. I think they could have done a little better job seeding some of those characters. Um,
for sure.
because other than Urk, you don't fight them terribly much. Uh, but there is kind of some aspect of it there. Um, yeah, I think I like the kind of the idea of like being able to hold on to flags through stuff. It also gets really weird too, right? You get the last two expansions we've had. One raid, you have to do all these quests to flag, and the other raid you don't have to do anything to flag. It's just like, what? Like, why are these so different? But
Great question. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a timing and release thing. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah,
Um,
I would speculate that because you get the second raid later, they're just like whatever, just let them do the raid because
yeah.
the idea is that you would have already done the first raid, like when Baba came out, the idea is that you would have run Strahd by that point.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but I do like the idea of being able to keep flags through reincarnations. I think because that I think that does hamper the lifespan of some of those raids. I mean, I don't know that Too Hot to Handle is going to have a super great lifespan just in general, because I think you look at Titan and Abbott, and the raids that are on the are really hard end of the spectrum, uh, don't tend to last very long, right?
well, admittedly, Titan also has the flagging problem. Flagging for Titan is such a pain. You have to go through this unintelligible area with traps and keys and monsters, and I don't know where I'm going, and there's no map. And then you have to do these quests that
You
are
can
really,
save the
really hard
sigil
by
though,
comparison to. Yeah, you can save the sigil, but I'm saying like most
yeah.
people don't want to do the process in the first place.
And the pre-raids are kind of a pain too, right? Like, it's really complicated and has a lot of stuff going on. So yeah,
And same thing like with the desert. It's not that people don't want to run Demon Queen; it's that people don't want to run to Demon Queen. Like the desert is so large
people
now
don't
with
want to run
horses, it's
Chains
not
of
a big
Flame.
deal. Yeah, but like you have to go to Chains of Flame, and with like I will say
Yeah.
mounts made it a lot easier, but I'm still not going to run it every life because it's just so out of
I
the
know.
way.
Uh,
So
I think we'd also look at RSO, right? Like, RSO has no flagging. You just have to be, I think, level 27. But it's
yep,
hard. The lightning damage is a big learning curve, particularly for players who are not really into raiding or do a lot of raiding or have a guild to support. Right? People don't run RSO. It
no,
has
they don't.
threads. It has no flagging. But people don't enjoy it, and people aren't really looking for the loot. And if they were, they've already
And
found loot that whatever. I don't need that loot. I'll get something else that's almost as good, or you know. So I think it all plays into it.
Yeah. Well, then it's also some of it's the design too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at some of the raids that are the most popular. You got like, um, Project Nemesis. Well, what does Project Nemesis has? It has a mix up of bosses, small scale ads, lots of different things you have to do. Different people needing to be in different places and roles. And what does Riding the Storm Out have? Big monsters with like 100 jillion health. Uh, Lightning damage that requires you to cooperate with other people to remove it off yourself with those pillars, and then a boss with a very annoying arena with absurd quantities of health,
You forgot the
especially at the time.
puzzles.
Oh yeah, and the puzzles. Oh man, I forgot about. Yeah, you're right, and the puzzles. So I feel like it. Part of it is the fact that the because like the raid loot and riding the storm out is good. It's just an annoying raid for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's just so many things that aren't as fun, like killing granular monsters in a raid. Like when you're going up the staircase in Strahd and you're being assaulted by all the flame skulls and the armors that are coming back at you. You have to assign people to do that job. People feel good about that. You have somebody who's working on the staircase. You have people that are kind of running in the middle, interference, doing healing. Everybody has like a role and a goal, and you're all working as a team. Riding the storm out, everyone is everywhere dying,
Yeah.
and there's just big giant monsters that you likely can't kill by yourself.
So I think we've established that difficulty level, fun factor, flagging mechanics, and available loot all go into play of how long a raid lasts. And
And
if you
video
don't,
game design is hard.
yeah, it's true. I mean, I think MA, Lord of Blades, and Vision Destruction have the potential to be long-standing from a fun perspective.
Oh yeah, Vision of
I'm
Destruction is
not
one of my
so
favorite raids.
sure about the loot perspective, just because we're getting an expansion and a level cap increase and soon, so that's going to be problematic. And we already saw with Lord of Blades Master Artificer what happened when you get a loot. You would go up levels and stuff. That loot died out pretty quick. So I hope people still do run them. They're some of my favorite raids, though. So
Ah, but this raid doesn't have flagging. Maybe you don't have to flag for these ones.
Nope. None of the
We'll
three
see.
raids should have flagging. So, although I wouldn't mind if Vision Destruction had they brought back that flagging, which was a server-wide flagging, which was kind of fun.
Oh yeah. Or hell, just even running there instead of putting a guy in town like ZZ.
Yeah, running through heroic explorer areas to go on a legendary raid is going to be kind of tedious. So,
Oh yeah, right. You'd have to make the legendary explorer area.
I mean, that just makes it longer, and no one's going to do it. They're all going to run it on. No one's going to run through those areas on legendary if they can also run through them on heroic, anyways. So
Yeah, you're right. Just put the guy in town.
yeah.
Damn DDO players.
All right. Let's we've stalled long enough. Let's get to our main topic, character stables. So the impetus for this came from Owen, who wrote in a couple weeks back, saying that we were talking about gearing in our series of gearing, and he mentioned a number of occasions you have a large stable of characters. This got him thinking that it might be a good topic to discuss. What characters or character types should you have in your stable? I'm sure you can come up with a better name than that. I can't. Sorry. I feel that this could be good for all players, be they vets for years or new players and returning players. Thanks for considering. So, we're just going to start from this idea. Like, what character types should you have in your stable? And we didn't really talk about this. Maybe we'll start here. What characters do you have in your stable, Strimtom?
It's actually a very interesting question. I think the most important thing in terms of like for myself is finding areas that I enjoy playing at. So less so the characters themselves, but just making sure my characters are set up that I can play them. So I have a support bard for playing at level 30 and doing raids and stuff. I have a DPS character who changes from life to life, but will always be a very focused single target DPS type character. And then I've got a character that I like to do lots of TRing on and trying different builds. So for me and my stable, and then I have like 20 bank cults. But the most of them have Sunflash too, which is very annoying. Um, the roster for me is more about less so the character themselves, but more so the situation that they're in. So that way I can enjoy, I want to play at level 30, I can play level 30 today and go do some raids with some friends, or I want to continue my reincarnation process, and that's how I want to keep going there.
Yeah, my situation is for a long time, I had a character that was each class. Um, with Alchemist, that changed. I dropped a class. I did not make a new character for Alchemist. Um, Now, most of those characters are kind of at various stages of, shall we say, readiness and playability. They're all capped. They can all go and do stuff. They don't have a lot of resources behind that. But they all also do something slightly different, right? Now, a lot of them are obviously going to be DPS characters, and we'll kind of get into archetypes here in a minute. But like my barbarian uses two-handed weapons. My fighter uses two-weapon fighting. My rogue is a Vistani rogue, right? Like there's all kind of like different aspects to them. A DC caster, a DPS caster, a melee healer, or like a melee divine, a caster divine, a just straight up healy kind of tanky divine. So they're all kind of, they're all different, right? Like I do something different with the different classes. These days, I only really play 3 characters, plus my bard, which is kind of my static group DDOCast character. So like there's a couple other characters I might pull out for. Generally speaking, they're just getting pulled out for rating. So I don't want to buy a bunch of timer strategies, so I keep some characters up. Now it's a little. I'll tell you right off the bat, having more characters makes upkeep a lot more challenging. Now I'm not trying to, like, these characters, if they're really just there to run these days, to be able to run raids at like a moderate difficulty level, usually like hard or Reaper 1, depending on the raid or something like that. Again, it's really just about being able to fill. I like being able to fill a bunch of different roles that we might need for a raid. So I like having characters at my disposal, so I don't have to reincarnate to go and change roles or something like that. But again, I really can only play 3 characters. And I think like my kind of, to start off with, I would say, you don't need a ton of characters. You might like to play a lot of characters, and that's totally fine. The more characters you have, I would say, branch out. I'm not going to tell you you're playing the game wrong if you're playing 20 healers. I am going to ask why you find that to be interesting and enjoyable, because that feels like a lot of extraneous work to me.
And why are they all clerics?
Yeah, but hey, if that's you, and I have a friend who that's kind of is, and she knows who she is, but it's not 20 characters either. So I think variety is more fun, but I have some friends who really predominantly play healers, and that's all they play, and that's fine. I would say that the place that I would recommend kind of as a baseline, generically, is have 3 characters. That's kind of, I think, a magic number. And the reason why I say that is because you can have one character as your TR project, whatever your current TR project is, and then you have 2 other characters, that you can leave at cap to do stuff like raiding or farm gear or that kind of thing. That I think is kind of, for me, been a pretty good number to really focus on. I generally find that these days, most raiding is not, we're going to run this raid 20 times in a row. At most, you might run a raid 7 or 8 times in a row, but then you're going to get into ransack problems, so people will stop doing that. But in terms of like guild raiding, you tend to move around more, right? So if you have 2 characters, it's unlikely in a raid night you're going to run a raid more than twice. So having two kind of characters you can pull in works. It also gives you options, which we'll talk about. What's your thought on that, Strimtom?
No, I'm literally exactly the same way. The benefit of having multiple characters, and again, this is assuming we're talking from the perspective of like getting to the end game, or at least getting to level 30.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an alcoholic making 30 characters and none of them are past level 6, that's a totally different story. But
Yep.
also, you do you, as long as you're having fun. That's the whole point. Um,
If you
but
take
from
nothing
terms
else
of
away
like,
from this, take that away.
yeah, exactly. Just have fun. But when it comes to like playing the game, trying to, have some long-term goals, I think that 3 characters is the absolute sweet spot. Because it means that, if you feel like one of your characters, one of the 3 is getting stale, you can reincarnate it, still participate with your guild, still play with your friends, or if you don't have any, still be able to find some friends and find people in that thing. Um, I think that 3 is the right number. Because it's just hard when you try to maintain more characters than that, especially with some aspects of DDO's gearing system, with how hard it can be to get some items from raids, or um, the different crafting components or sentient jewels. 3 is just it's a good number of characters to get like off of the ground with, and it gives you a reasonable amount of variety. That
Mm-hmm.
variety might come in the form of you like 3 melee characters or 3 healers, as you were just saying. Um, but that's the good amount to at least get yourself started.
It's a good place to kind of set your goals, right? And if you like having more characters, it's fine. But I would get at least one character up to cap, and in a place where you feel comfortable doing. Like if you're in a guild that does raiding, get a character that's flagged for everything that your guild's running, and just leave them there, right? Uh, I'm in a guild that does a lot of reincarnating. Like people are constantly reincarnating, and we already talked about flagging mechanics and stuff, right? Like, and we'll do raid night twice a week, and sometimes there's some other raids that happen throughout the week. But there's definitely on raid night, all right, we're gonna run these raids. Oh, I'm not flagged for those two, so I'll run the first one, then I'm gone, right? Like, and people miss out. Now they're not necessarily upset about that because a lot of them already have what they need. But if you have that, even just that second character that you can have to participate in your guild, I think you will find a lot more enjoyment out of that guild experience, particularly if your guild does raids and stuff like that. You can run at that higher level with your guild and not just be constantly TRing, and because I think you tend to get disconnected, right? Like I've seen that happen to a lot of folks where they're in this guild that like, I wish I was raiding with you guys, but I've been doing TRs for a year, 2 years, right? Well, if you had a character that was a second character that you could run raids with us, then you could still do that. You could do both.
Exactly. People ask the question, well, how am I supposed to get completionist if I'm always raiding? Just make a second guy. Boom. Completionist and raiding.
Yep.
That's pretty much one of the reasons why I stuck a character at cap in the first place. Is during the reincarnation process, I gripe about how hard it is to re-gear a character after you get to level 30, especially if you play a different build from the build you played last life. And eventually I just snapped. I was like, no, 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 I'm not doing this anymore. Made a character. Second, I think it, or I reincarnated a character, so it's like a second life. And just stuck it at 30. Perfect.
Yep.
Does the job.
Yeah, and as we're talking about, like, so to give you an idea of my 3 characters, right? One is my TR project, and I'm finally like really on board with TRing, and I've been doing it in a way that I find it mostly enjoyable, and it hasn't sucked. Um, my other 2 characters that are kind of my main 2 characters, or one is a monk, so he falls into kind of the DPS melee category, and we'll get into these categories here in a minute. And my other one is a favored soul with 3 levels of paladin and tank stance, and he's a little bit more durable. Um, that favored soul only has like 3 or 4 past lives, and he's able to kind of hang in some pretty challenging stuff. Like I was actually running him in R10 killing time because that's what we were trying to do as a guild, and we needed they needed someone to fill that spot, and I was available, so I did. And he actually did pretty darn well. I was pretty impressed. I was expecting it to be a lot more painful for me, but he did okay. So it's actually a surprisingly low amount of investment needed to be at that level where you can run raids with a character, right? You don't have to go crazy with the past lives to do that. It helps. I'm not gonna tell you it doesn't, but you don't have to. You still have success there.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, let's kind of get into some archetypes. And maybe what are the kind of archetypes that you look at that are kind of out there for players to kind of choose from?
So I think that um, the way that I look at the different types of characters in Dungeons and Dragons, I think about melee. You've got melee characters, people are going to be getting in there, doing some damage. The whole point of a melee character is doing damage. You might have some crowd control effects, a trip, a dire charge, a tantrum, whatever it is, but you're mostly in there to hit people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your main goal. Then I think of ranged. So ranged for me is people who are both using crossbows, bows, thrown weapons, and also offensive ranged casters. People who are trying to deal damage but not be in melee range. Um, because at the end of the day, a sorcerer has a slightly different resource than an inquisitive, but they're both trying to meet the same goal, which is remove the enemy
Damage.
from the field. Um, and then I move in mentally to crowd control type characters, um, characters who are all about not explicitly doing damage as their first goal. So instead of fireball being the first spell, it's hold monster or um, solid fog or something, whichever it is you want to cast. Uh, then you
With
have like
with
healing.
that,
Sorry, go ahead.
before you go on, we're talking about like a crowd control character. Do you find like when I think of that, I kind of dub it DC casting, right? Like I don't really think like you can do some of that stuff as like a melee, like the monk has a lot of crowd control options, but I don't really think of that as something that they is their primary thing, right? They're still like a DPS first.
E-
Do
No,
you
I
fight?
agree with you. I agree with you. The
Okay,
reason why I don't use specifically caster is because you can play crowd control characters that aren't casters.
okay,
A great example is Bard. You have so many freezes, and with strike through,
okay,
you can
sure,
get 4 targets hit with your freezes that last over 30 seconds.
okay,
Um, so they make great crowd control, and also fascinate, not technically a cast. And then I think of things like falconry as another example of very good crowd control command of a character that isn't specifically casting. So that's why when I say melee, I'm thinking like a monk or a barbarian, characters that
sure,
100% have some crowd control in there, but getting the monster's health to 0 is like the primary goal.
sure,
And also, you can mix and match all these categories, which is the
yes,
fun part about DDO. Um, and I encourage you to do it because if you're playing and you just say, hey, you know what, I want to play as a healer, but what if I can play as a melee healer? You can mix those two ideas and think yourself a genius. But when you see how much more effective the healers, the pure healers, and the pure melee are at both their pure melee and their pure healing, you'll
yeah,
realize, when you're in a group, you can achieve so much more when people sacrifice some of the playstyle. Um, so I do think, and that's one of the best parts about this game is the hybridization.
hmm
But you know, all these categories mixed together, but they're always going to be missing something once you start mixing. There's
yeah,
no free lunch, as they were. But yeah, so my last two categories are healers and tanks. Healers, they heal people. Tanks, they don't die. Um, tanks are often, they're usually have some healer built in, like your kind of tanky-ish favorite soul type character. Um, or they may be playing as like a bear druid where they can just throw out some mass regenerates, something like that, where it's not their main role, but they can do something. And they're usually not focused on damage too much.
they're
The
focused
one
on
thing I
taking damage,
Exactly, and preventing people from dying
right?
is the big thing. The last one that kind of doesn't really fit in anywhere into DDO is kind of like a support role, because supports really can't be done by all of like a lot of classes have different types of support spells. Renegade Mastermaker, the Bard with all of its buffs, the Fatesinger tree, heck, even like a bunch of the Warlock stuff is all about debuffing and buffing allies, which
hmm
is kind of weird. Warlock. But it's so infrequently played. Oh yeah, and traps. Other outside of trapping, the rest of the support stuff is very infrequently played. So
Sure.
it's definitely in there, but
We got like
there is space for it.
buffing, trapping, kind of like a utility bucket, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
What
go ahead.
I was gonna say, what about you? How do you feel about some of that?
Yeah. So it's really similar, right? Like I would break it down even a little bit more generically. Um, basically like DPS, right? You're gonna do damage, right? Whether that's melee, ranged, or casting, right? And those three are all very different. And even like you talk about melee and range, right? Like, well, what kind of weapons are you using? Like, are you doing two-handed fighting, unarmed, like, or bows, crossbow? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But generically pulling back a little bit more, melee, range, casting, damage, right? Like, those are the three kind of ways that you're going to do damage. Tank, of course, right? Like, and there, I will say too, like, tank is probably one of the least played build types. I think it's
tank or support, one of those two.
I'd probably put it as tank. I don't really think of support, like the support utility thing, as being like a main role. You can build for it, but I think it works better as kind of a secondary or tertiary feature of a character than it does a primary feature of a character. Having said that, I have seen some people do some stuff like that, so you might be right. Like, but I don't think of that as kind of like this bigger category, right? The DPS tank, I kind of like the term DC casting, as opposed to crowd control, because I think it also captures like instant killing a little better than crowd controlling. But we're kind of in the same vein, and then healing, right? Like, and basically, like I think you can break it down to those four things, right? DPS, tank, DC, casty, crowd control, and healers. And my recommendation within that is, if you've got 3 characters, unless you're the kind of if you want to play 3 healers, that's fine, right? Like, I'm not gonna case about that. But from the perspective of someone who's been in a guild that does frequent raiding for a number of years, I think it's really helpful if you pick 3 of those 4, right? And the reason why that's helpful is because you can switch out roles a lot easier to run a raid, right? And one person doesn't always get sunk doing the tanking. If they really like tanking, great. But even people who like tanking, and I'm one of them, like to play other things occasionally in a raid, right? And
it also gives you an appreciation too.
Yeah, it does.
Like, you think, oh man, this tank, he's always doing this, and he's not doing things the way that I like it. And you play a tank and you go, oh no, this is I don't like this. This is hard. You definitely get an appreciation for what some of the other party members that are doing, in the group. On top of that, if you're worried about playing a character, you think to yourself, I've never played a healer before. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
It's a great team building activity to talk to the people in your guild and get insight from them. Helping each other build characters is one of the most fun parts about this entire game, and kind of sharing in that experience. It's just it's a very wholesome DDO moment when you sit down with somebody and say, hey, I am the student, please help me learn.
And people love teaching too, right? Makes them feel smarter. And they might even be. Sometimes maybe they're going to give you bad advice, but at least they feel like they're like you want to know what they know, right? So,
yeah.
And so I would say, particularly if you're in a guild that likes to do raiding, get like 3 kind of different archetypes available to yourself, right? And I would even kind of extend to say that like 2 of those could be a melee DPS or a ranged or caster DPS, right? Because there are, if you've run Project Nemesis, you will understand why it is, why you need to have ranged DPS. You almost don't even need melee DPS in that.
You don't need melee; it's very upsetting.
But you definitely need some range, right? But ranged caster DPS tends to be a little more squishy, and you're running killing time, and maybe you want more. You're gonna be skewed more towards melee DPS because they tend to be a little hardier. But I'd say pick 3, right? And that's a great place to get started. And you can kind of tier those out a little bit, right? Like I have one that I'm really heavily investing in right now, and the other 2 I'm not really investing in. But when I'm done with the one, I'll invest in some of the other ones, right? And but being able to having a couple people in your guild or your group of friends that can switch around and fulfill needed roles for a raid is really powerful in terms of being able to raid. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I remember back in the days when Tower of Despair was the end game, and this was even before Reincarnation, I think. And you know, people wanted to get certain items on the specific character. We have less of that problem now with raid runes. Um, but we'd spend 20 minutes trying to figure out who was going to heal Tower of Despair. Like we could finish the raid in the time it took us to find that last healer spot, right? So having a couple people in your guild that can switch into the roles that you need to have success in a raid is a really powerful thing in terms of group dynamics and being able to be productive and not spending a half an hour trying to form a raid.
Yeah, and another great thing about having characters with clear goals and clear understanding of what they're supposed to do in your own stable, uh, while leveling, it's really nice to have kind of that utility belt of, well, I've got a little crowd control, I've got a little healing, I'm kind of tanky. It makes it really easy for the leveling process. Once you get to end game, it's you appreciate so much, the person that they didn't multi-class rogue, but they do way more damage because of it, or they have so much extra spell points on their healer, or something. You start to appreciate those people a lot more. And when you have this stable roster of characters, if you have a character, you made a fighter, he's a two-handed fighter, he is supposed to do melee damage, you decided that right away. If you leave that character there at 30, you don't have to worry about, oh, is there going to be a healer in this group? That's the point of having that character at that level. Someone else is going to play another character that they have, and you get that synergy whenever you want to have that synergy. um, and it's helpful for both, the raid, but it also lets you experience exactly the thing that your character is
Mhm.
supposed to do, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I've talked several times in the show about with a given character, pick a primary role, secondary features, tertiary features, right? You get beyond that, you're gonna really water down what your character can do. Um, Now, the more that you want to push things, right? Like if you want to start running stuff on Reaper 5 or 6 or 10, or running raids on 2, 3, 4, 5 skulls, stuff like that, you're gonna have to be more specialized and less uh, have less fun features of your character, right? Because you're just not going to be able to, in order to get that tertiary feature, you have to give up some of your primary things, right? Which may mean you spend more time being dead, or you don't do enough damage to really be good enough to hang with that crowd, or whatever that may be. But that doesn't mean that you can't splash a little bit, right? Um, so if you're one of those people that is looking at how to, what characters do I have, and I want to like really push the difficulty level, then you're gonna want to be a little bit more focused. But if you're not, if you're just doing some some stuff that you find you're really comfortable running and you're okay with that and you're not looking to push stuff, you can really play around with that extra features of what your character can do. So you can have a character who is a healer who is also can be a tank, right?
Yeah, exactly. And knowing what it is, if you have friends or goals at the end game, if everyone in your guild's like, oh, we're clearing, we do guilds on elite and we run our weekly elite runs, then yeah, play whatever you want. If your guild says, hey, by the way, we're trying to do X raid on Reaper 7 and we're trying to get it, don't bring your swashbuckler. Just, you know,
You'll
clear
have to be,
goals, clearly
yeah,
clearly defined character roles. Um, and I wanted to clarify something actually, and for me this is kind of an important thing. The reason why I said melee and ranged, I didn't really specify caster in there, is because you have both melee casters and ranged casters. Stuff in terms
sure.
of like Eldritch Knight or even just some warlocks don't have great range, and there's a lot of different melee spells in there, like the Eldritch Wave and things that are very melee. Um, and it's mostly because I think of it in terms of positioning. Half of the raids in DDO are won and lost based on where people are standing at any given time. Too Hot to Handle is an insane example of this. Like if one person's standing in the wrong place or doesn't go to the ads right away, then you basically lose. Um, and so when you think of, okay, I am playing it in melee, maybe I'm actually hitting people with my weapon, maybe I'm just casting fireballs at the ground on my sorcerer. Um, it's the same kind of thing.
Sure.
What playstyle do you feel is that fits you the best? There's nothing wrong with playing a melee sorcerer,
Nope.
even if it's just casting spells but standing there. Just make sure you know that's what you want to do and that's how
Mhm.
you do it.
And that so when where we're gonna kind of go with this series is we'll break down tanks, kind of more of the DC casting type, which applies to both instant kill spells or crowd control spells, healers, and then we'll break down DPS probably into melee range and caster. You're talking about it from a positioning standpoint, which I think is a great way of thinking about it. We'll break it down in terms of those three, mostly from a standpoint that you're going to be building and gearing with different things in mind. If you're if you're doing elemental damage, you need to get spell power and spell critical and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's good to start with the baseline. You start at the bottom and then you build up from there. You say, okay, I understand my different character archetypes. Now, how do I want to bend them to make something that really fits with exactly the niche that my guild needs?
So going back a little bit, so those I think we can kind of agree. Like there's four primary types, and you can subdivide DPS a lot. But DPS, tank, crowd control, DC castery type, and then healing, right?
Yeah.
My recommendation, like the first thing that I would say to work towards is building a competent DPS character. Because if you look at any group, right, there's more space for DPS. Right.
Yep. And every raid and every DDO quest, no matter what you got to do, you have to kill the monsters to get through it.
Yeah. And depending on what you're doing, you can, if you're clever, you can get away with a lack of some other things, right? If you're just running stuff on heroic elite 4 levels above, you probably don't need a tank. So, what I would say, DPS is probably the first thing that I would, if you're looking to build out your character stable, I'd say start with a DPS. My next suggestion would be to go with a healer type. My experience is they tend to be, I think fewer people really enjoy playing a healer than other types. I don't really have a great idea as to why that is, but my anecdotal history tells me that it's generally harder to find a healer than it is most anything else. You can kind of make things up if you need a tank or for a lower difficulty level, and you may not really need crowd control if you can out DPS stuff anyways. But at a certain point, you're going to need healing, particularly if you're talking about raids. Even if you're talking about stuff on normal, you're going to need some healing.
Yep.
I also find, at least for me, that those are kind of the two easier ones to go towards. I think they take less investment, they take less gear, healer especially, right? Like, you take a favorite soul, throw 3 levels of fighter or paladin in it, and take a defender stance, and you're going to be pretty beefy for content until you start running, above 3 skulls or start running raids higher than hard, and you can do a lot with a little investment in healing.
Yeah. It's also important to note that DDO is one of the few MMOs that doesn't have heal aggro. So if you just don't go to the monsters, they can large. They'll never find you. You need to stand back and keep everybody alive.
Until something appears behind you and spawns behind you. And
yeah, exactly. Until a pathing monster or something happens to get you.
Yeah.
But healers are definitely very low on the gear requirement list, versus DPS, which are pretty high on the gearing requirement because the amount of little bonuses you can get, every +1 matters on a DPS. It's all about numbers going up.
Yeah, but I think
DPS. But you also learn a lot about the game too, though. Like DPS and the gearing, you understand what is the balance that I need. Do I need damage? Okay, and then I need to make sure I'm not dying. Okay, and then I need to have saves. All right, and then I need resistances. So you kind of have to get a good balance of things, which is good for learning. And then playing a healer, it just helps you understand other players better. And on top of that, you are loved by everybody.
It's true. if you're halfway decent.
If I have a group and I'm like, oh, we're playing Reaper 4, and then I just see pure cleric like 13 wants to join my party, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go.
It's on now.
Yeah, healers are great.
Especially when you're playing in Reaper, right? Because the self-healing penalty kicks in. It could be a thing. Tank is a kind of a weird archetype, I think. My sense with tank is if you are going for kind of a lower level difficulty, like you're gonna run raids, your guild's mostly gonna run raids on hard or maybe elite, maybe Reaper 1. You can make a really effective tank without too much investment. But if you really want to start pushing into harder difficulties, tank suddenly requires you to do a lot more investing. And not just in gearing and past lives, but also Reaper points, because that's going to give you a lot of hit points. And, your whole goal as a tank is to not run out of hit points. So I find tank to be one that, depending on what level, like if you're really going to push your difficulty, tank is going to take more investment than even, I think, DC casting. But like the initial stages of I want to play a tank, you don't need as much as DC casting.
For sure. It's also important to note that I think that tanks take probably the most amount of work out of any of the different player classes just to play, like keyboard and mouse. You have to pay attention to the boss. You have to pay attention when monsters are coming in. Do I have everyone the thing? Is the boss using an attack? Am I turning him the right way? There are a lot of questions you have to ask yourself as a tank on top of, am I in range of the healer? Am I accidentally doing line of sight? Did a monster go after the healer? So you're trying to track on so many different things. The number of times I've seen a tank not to pay attention in Project Nemesis and get kind of distracted and then drag Ruddus the wrong way. So then Ruddus does his jump, or he gets too close instead of kiting him, and then half of the raid wipes because, if you're a DPS and you hit the wrong target, maybe you die, you pull aggro, you do something dumb. But if you're a tank and you make a mistake, everybody dies. So it's a very, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it's a good opportunity to learn, but it is harder. And leveling through DDO doesn't really teach you much about the ins and outs of raid tanking, so it's something you got to learn in the fire.
And and I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. I would throw in the kind of caveat there that I think that the entry level, being an entry level tank, you don't have to get quite to that level, right? I think entry level tanking is I don't think you need a lot of investment. I don't think you need to have really high level of skill. You don't really have to, like, you can get into it pretty good. But definitely, like, when you start pushing difficulty and harder content, it ramps up. I think you're absolutely right. Ramps up a lot more than other places. And then DC casting is kind of the classic, you got to go big or don't bother, right? Like, you need to find every single +1 to DCs that you can find and muster and stay alive kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I think that is also, I think, all three of the other archetypes are built around this idea of progressive, what I'll call progressive gameplay. By which I mean, it doesn't really matter how good of DPS you are. If you're doing DPS, you're progressing through the dungeon, right? You're killing stuff. Healing, it doesn't really matter how good of a healer you are. If you're keeping people up, you're progressing through the dungeon. Same with a tank, right? Like, but DC casting is pass fail mechanic. Either it lands or it doesn't, and there's no real in between. So if you're trying to finger of death and wail and instant kill a bunch of stuff, if you don't kill them, that stuff isn't gonna, like, the fail mechanic of those spells is not gonna kill the monster. It's still gonna be there, and you're still not getting anywhere. So it's one of those. It's it's a different gameplay than the other three by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, you're also playing like almost an entirely different game at that point.
Yeah.
Like when you think about in terms of the impact on a dungeon, like damage, they're hitting the scoreboard with the kills. Healer, people aren't dying, they're feeling good. Tanks are managing the monsters, they're kind of controlling the battlefield. Crowd control, it's hard to tell if it's the crowd control or the tank that's kind of doing a lot of the job there. So you kind of have to be self-assured in what you're doing sometimes. And then also You're amplifying people's damage by holding monsters. You're stopping things from moving. You're not even interacting with the monsters in the same way that everyone else is. Like you're not you're not healing people. Or you might be on the side, but it's not like your main role. You're not killing the monsters unless you're like instant killing them, but the health bars aren't going down. You're It's like everyone else is playing they're out there playing Rocket League or something and they're having a great time, and then you're on the side, you're playing chess at the same time, but it's all happening in the same game. um, I think it appeals to a different type of player, but it is a very, very fun play style, especially when you just walk into a room and you just pop a hole and then everything disappears, or as the melee are running towards a pack of monsters, you just put a circle of death under them and they all just dissolve. So it can be very appealing.
It can be. Of the kind of archetype you're talking about, though, I think DC casting is the hardest one to start and get into and be successful and have fun with.
Yes.
At least
also
it is for me.
because the mathematics is hard.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to know, like, how often am I getting resisted? The number one question I asked during stream? What do my DCs need to be for what level?
Sure.
I'm level 17. What do my DCs need to be? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. Are you running content from like this year or 8 years ago? Like,
it matters a lot.
There's a lot of variability, and especially with monster types and stuff. Saves go all over the place versus health bars, which don't as much. So I think that it's hard to learn, it's hard to get used to, but it is very rewarding in and of itself. Yeah. And also, your party members will love you. Holy crap!
Yep. There's a lot more. There's a bigger learning curve early on to DC casting, I think, than most of it, because you have to learn what monsters are weak against what saves. Then you throw in champions and what that does to their saves and their vulnerabilities and their immunities and stuff like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, like, you don't want to be tossing instant kill effects of Flameborns.
Yeah, if you're a necrocaster that's throwing instant kill stuff, you learn very quickly which champions have Death Ward.
Yep.
And then you scream at everyone else to kill them because you can't. So, right. Well, I think that's a pretty good place. Anything else you want to say before we close up?
Yeah. The most important thing is
we might have lost Strimtom. I want to say, like, I think the big kind of thing you want to look at here is have fun, right? Like, we'll try to give you some ideas on how to build these characters and stuff, but figure out what's fun for you and kind of go in that direction. For me, it's playing different characters. For other people, like I said, I know people that they just play DPS characters and they just play DC casters or something. Having multiple options, I think, gives you a better appreciation and allows you to play the game more to its fullest, but that doesn't have to be you. Right, so you can go any kind of direction you want with that. We'll get more into these different the different archetypes and building them and kind of give you some ideas and tricks and stuff along those lines in coming episodes. It will not be a straight run through, so we'll probably look at tank next, but there might be some other topics kind of interspersed in between. But this will be an ongoing series to kind of give everyone an idea of their, have fun, play what makes you happy, and enjoy it. Right, there's a lot of fun places there, and I would also say that with these discussions, like, I'm gonna try to find people who are really good at building these kinds of characters, and I'm gonna do that because I want to give you, the listener and players, the best information out there that I can get for you. But don't feel like that means that if you can't reach that level of play, that you can't play these kinds of characters. There's 14 different difficulties in the game that you can play. So, don't expect to, if you can't build a tank for R10 killing time right out of the gate, don't feel bad. Most people can't. Like, it's a big ask. But that's where we're going. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Strimtom for joining me. You can check out his stuff, twitch.tv/Strimtom, and he's also on YouTube, and @Strimtom on Twitter. Thanks for all the other contributors for DDOCast and to Saying Some Games and to Wizards of the Coast and to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. Hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you want to be a part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, leave a comment or email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates at DDOcast on Twitter is the best place for that. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.